Hi, Luke here from the Talking Theatre podcast, and before you start this episode, this is just a warning to say that this podcast does contain some strong language and adult humour, but also it is hopefully a bit of a laugh, and, we talk all things theatre. So, with that formal announcement out of the way, let's get on with this week's podcast. Hi mate, welcome back, how are you?
Hi, I'm not bad mate, I'm not bad. Yourself?
I'm alright, thank you, yeah. I'm sure avid viewers can see that there's a little bit of a difference in my shot this week than last week, and I should probably put my hand up and say the reason that we didn't record last week is kind of my fault, but kind of not.
I wouldn't put it on you, it was more of just a
coincidence.
Difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure at the moment I've put some B-roll over the top of this about why I have said new device in front of me and why we couldn't record a podcast last week, but we thought we'd take the opportunity to let you guys catch up on any episodes that you might have missed, and I know we both had a few other bits and pieces that was going on now that we have officially graduated.
Yeah, we have. We're done now.
We are.
We're no longer university students, we're now just officially unemployed.
Exactly, although we're not yet claiming state benefits.
Give it time.
I know, right? Although I can't imagine that we'll be the only people that will be on the long list of ex-students that will be waiting for that.
But we shall fight on through.
Exactly.
We are the graduates of 2020.
Exactly.
We've been through a fair amount. We're going to do strong things. We'll do well. I'm convinced of it. Because if we don't, it'll be awful. So we're going to.
Exactly. And in other news, I'm still waiting for my man.
Okay. Well, has anyone asked you out on a date yet, or is it just
No, unfortunately, we're not at that stage in our relationship. I've been stood up for the past 2 weeks, so I'm not sure as if I think that this is the one or not.
This point is, if you've been stood up for 2 weeks now, it's sort of time to just leave it.
I know, but at the same point, I've still got some of their items. They're downstairs in the living room in a big box.
I mean, the items, not the man.
Yes, as in the things that they're supposed to be coming to put in the house. Because obviously,
I hope your man shows up soon.
I know.
You're quite upset about not having him around, so someday soon hopefully he'll arrive.
Well, it's not so much that, it's the fact that, they said there was something wrong with the house and they need to go and fix it urgently, so who knows? Who knows where my man is?
Who knows? Hopefully he'll turn up.
Exactly, but with that little catch-up concluded, we better get on with this week's podcast.
Yes.
Hello everybody and welcome back to this episode 8 of the Talking Theatre podcast with me, Luke.
And myself, Tom.
And this week we're going to go into a little bit about some things that we've been talking about on recent episodes surrounding the idea about restaging classic works in the modern age. But first we've just got a little bit of theatre news to catch up on because we missed out on an episode last week, and there was some fairly substantial news that came out, Tom.
Indeed.
So I've got the article here, and I will just give it a read for those of you that aren't aware as to what's gone on. But I'm also going to say that I don't think that people should take out as much of what, there's been a bit of an uproar about it, and I don't think that there needs to be. So the big headline is that the Phantom of the Opera will close in the West End and a stark blow for London theatre fans. Published on the London Standard, producer Cameron McIntosh confirmed in an article that the production had been permanently shut down as a result of the coronavirus theatre closures, and that he and the music's composer Andrew Lloyd Webber are determined to bring the show back in the future. And it goes on to say that he talks about how in early May I warned Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden and the government that this would be necessary unless we received financial help. Despite the recent announcement of the £1.57 billion rescue fund for the arts, this help still hasn't materialised. And he doubled down on his plea to the Prime Minister to provide the money needed to survive and a realistic time plan for reopening. I've got my thoughts on that, Tom, but I just wanted to hear yours quickly first.
I mean, it's inevitable, wasn't it? There was going to be a big one. That was going to be the big closure. I mean, there was a lot of them that were meant to open that didn't, obviously because of coronavirus, and a lot of the smaller venues sort of had to cancel a lot of stuff, which wasn't really big news, or at least not mainstream news. But the one that, like, this is the first one I think that's the big boy going down. I don't mind too much. I personally don't really like Phantom, but it does. Yeah, it's a strange one because it does sort of signify the start of what could be coming. Hopefully, this is the only one that sort of takes a big hit. I mean, no, it won't be, but we can hope. But yeah, I don't know. It was going to happen. It was just a matter of time before one of the big boys shut down.
I mean, in my opinion, I don't think there's anything to worry about at all. I mean, yes, obviously, it's not great for the people who worked on that show, of course. But as you said, it was inevitable. We know that, a big majority of their audience come from the Asian market. It is very much a tourist show. It's been turned into that, and it's been going for 30 years or so anyway now. The reality is that if you like Phantom or want to have seen it, you've probably seen it by now anyway. And I think in some ways it was more Cameron McIntosh's kind of way of saying to the government, let's do something, and kind of having this like, whoa, my God, like what's going on, to kind of create a bit of a storm in the theatre world to get people going, oh, this is terrible, what's all happening and stuff. And realistically, I don't necessarily think that there's anything more going on than that, other than, I mean, the show's had its money now. It's made, I'm sure, billions potentially in revenue. It's been all over the world and whatever, and I think he basically just saw this opportunity to hone in on other things that's probably more important. But I also do think it's probably a good thing in the sense of it now frees up a proper West End venue for something else to come in and have a major impact. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
That's something else I was thinking of. I'm hoping it would be a space for the big theatres to see, that's gone. Let's try something new, different. Because obviously there are still other big shows that will be continuing. But you need to just stop, like, Phantom.
Exactly.
My cat has just walked in and is meowing absolutely incessantly.
Oh, is she, like, rubbing around your legs or something?
Yeah, and the cables. Don't eat that, please.
Oh.
She's a bit dense. She's very sweet, but a bit dense. Just her. Anyway, Phantom, yeah, I don't see it as the end of the world.
And I mean, if you are a Phantom fan out there, we are sorry for your loss. But other than that, as we say, it could be a very good thing, because it can be seen as a warning, and it's a massive theatre that's now got the potential to take something new in, and I think that's an exciting proposition. So, all those little Twitter keyboard warriors out there that were ferociously retweeting and commenting on the original post last week probably might end up looking a little bit foolish and a little bit silly, but that's only our prediction, as we say. Who knows? Now,
this week's episode, this is something that we've sort of been thinking about, the whole theatre ideology of taking classics and reinventing them. We see this as sort of an inevitability because it happens already, and now that they need more revenue, it'll keep happening. So we thought we'd go back into our favourite classics, and possibly the lesser known ones, maybe not, we don't know, we'll see how it comes up, and sort of invent them ourselves to maybe give a previously unknown classic a new style. Shh. She is being very loud. I'll get rid of her in a sec.
Oh, don't get rid of her. I'm sure our loyal fans would like to see if she can make an appearance actually properly in the podcast.
I mean, if she wants to come up, she can. She'll take way too long to convince to come up here.
Really?
But yeah, so let's have a little hiatus and get into it.
Exactly. So, as Tom said, this week is a little bit different. We're going to be going back in the archives and kind of reinventing some classic works that might be lesser known or just loved by either one of us. So, Tom, the floor is yours. Pitch your concept of theatre in 2020 as a reimagined classic.
So, Last time I think this was redone was in 2014, from my knowledge in sort of the big theatres. So I'm going to sort of go through, if I was to reinvent this play, how I would do it. Now, those of you who know me and have sort of known me through uni will know that this is no surprise. I've tried to do it before. Unfortunately, didn't get it through. But I lost to Much Ado, and I had a great time doing that, so I can't complain. But the play that I would want to reinvent is William Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost. I love this. I saw it at the RSC in 2014, and they set it in 1913 or 14, before the war. And it was beautiful. It was really nice, and I really enjoyed it. It was funny, one of the funniest Shakespeare's I've ever seen, and I loved it. But I think it's one of those ones that if you say, name a Shakespeare play, and someone goes, "Oh, Love's Labour's Lost," you think, "Oh, that's niche." That's not one of the big ones. Like, I don't know how much. Do you know it at all? Do you know it?
No, not really. No.
Yeah, it's one that is often not taught in schools. It's very rarely put on, but I think it's a really clever play and it's a good laugh. Like, one thing I always say about it, there's one scene where there's a couple of really intellectual people chatting away. I think they're talking about philosophy or something deep and meaningful. And then there's a policeman just sat there. And at the end of it, they go to the policeman and something like, "Oh, dude, you haven't spoken much." And he goes, "Yeah, no, I haven't understood a word you said." And he just gets up and walks away. Like, the whole scene is a bit like, I love it. It's very funny. But yeah, I think if I was to do it, this is where it gets interesting. I'd probably do it on the RSC stage, at the main one.
Okay.
Because I love that stage. You know, that's one of my favourite stages. Whenever someone says imagine a play, that's one of the first places I go to, which is really odd. But I love it. And it would be set in a university. So just for a bit of a context, the play revolves around, it opens with 4 blokes who then swear off women and love in order to focus on their studies. So they don't let women in the building, they don't let women near them, and they have to focus on their studies. I think they fast as well, no drinking, nothing like that. And then 4 women turn up. I think one's the Queen of France, Princess of France, or something like that. It's been a while since I've read it, I need to reread it. And each of the 4 guys falls in love with one of the 4 women, and then they have to sort of figure out how to sort of make them fall for each other while trying to keep to the secret. And there's lots of classic Shakespearean hijinks and misunderstood identities and stuff like that. But yeah, so I'd set it at a university, and I'd have the 4 men as sort of either students or PhD students or something like that, and then the 4 women are other students that are coming in for like a Erasmus or like foreign exchange sort of thing, and then have the whole thing pan out like that. But yeah, I think that the key bit I was going to change was I was going to make the fool of the play. I was going to rewrite his lines as English, just plain old contemporary English.
Yeah.
Have them be a bit sort of meta, stand out a bit, and have it more of like a relatable lost character, sort of being confused by what's going on. But yeah, that's basically the base level of what I was going to do with that. And I think it'd be great. And the other selling point I had for it was the entire thing was going to be set to the soundtrack of Tom Mish's Geography, the album.
Okay.
Oh, it's beautiful. It works so well on so many different levels. And if you haven't listened to that album, you need to. It's great. But yeah, that's sort of where I was heading with it.
So just kind of going a little bit further into detail then, with this idea...
Ask any questions.
This idea surrounding the fool, obviously the fool in Shakespeare's world usually aren't the fool, they're the very, very clever ones. So how do you think that translates with them speaking presumably in modern English? Do you think that is better enhanced for an audience if they can clearly identify what the fool is saying?
Well, I think it's a bit of just something a bit different as well. Like it will make what they're doing clearer. But this character sort of they engage in witty banter with the intelligent people in the groups. Like they'll get into sort of quite like very funny conversations. And I think if you bring in the sort of sense that they're both speaking different languages in some sort of way, you can make it very accessible for new audiences as well. And it can almost be a sort of a trustworthy is the wrong word, reliable. Yeah, I'm going to say reliable narrator for an audience who may be new to Shakespeare or something like that, because it's, as a play, the language is quite intense and complex at times. It's one of his more sort of linguistically challenging plays, but sort of having a character that could then step back and then change your perspective into the way they speak normally, I think that could be quite an interesting development, especially when the fool is involved. That's when everything goes wrong, effectively. Well, for the most part. And sort of play off that. But I think it'll be a more, while, traditionally sort of they are the smartest person in the room, I think in Lovejoy's Lost, while that could probably be true, arguably to be true, I think it would just be fun to properly clown them up. Sort of make a bit more of a relatable idiot.
Yeah.
An everyday idiot sort of thing. I don't know. I always found that appealing. If someone put contemporary words over Shakespeare. 10 Things I Hate About You is a film that I've always loved, and it sort of takes so much Shakespeare in it, but it's also so contemporary, and I love it. Awesome. That's sort of that's the sort of thing. But the soundtrack as well went so perfectly. But I definitely recommend the read on it. And if you don't know the play, go watch the play or read the play, because it's great.
It's in my big book of Shakespeare's plays in my bookcase, I'm sure.
Your complete works.
Yeah, just over there.
Complete works.
I know, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they're brilliant. And I have obviously kind of skimmed through them, but because of how massive each play is, you do have to be like, really go in
it's
and...
a bit of an intense one, yeah. It's quite a long one and it goes on a bit. Actually, no, it's quite a long one, I don't know.
And you see like a whole scene on like a quarter of a page, and you're like, oh my, how small is the writing for that?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. That when you get it in like a complete work selection and they sort of cram it into one, that's when it gets more like a Bible.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I feel like it's good for the kind of like first time if they are a little bit more niche and not kind of as well known, but otherwise I just prefer to buy the actual text of the play. So, I mean, as people know, I don't have great eyesight, but even people with great eyesight, I'm sure, are doing that because you
the big complete works. They're more ornate. It's more like so you can say you've got a complete work.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that for any kind of theatre or English student, like you kind of just got to have on the bookcase,
just in case.
Because you never know when you might need it.
Yeah, I think mine was given to me as a gift once. So
I can imagine that.
Mine's a nice one. It's got like illustrated bits, and it's lovely.
Oh no, mine's just one that you buy in Waterstones. Thick it is. It's massive. Yeah, it's on my bookshelf. I mean, I nearly got it out because I nearly also went down that route, but
I think
I didn't.
Before we get into the one that you actually chose, which one did you almost choose?
Well, I nearly choose again, in the sense of I nearly did 12 Nights, but it has been done a lot, but it is a phenomenal play, and I still think there's so much you can extract out of that play. And I think that the way it uses gender and sexuality is so fascinating and so innovative. I can't really say that word, but you know what I meant.
That was the one that was they did a digital, didn't they?
They did. Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Where she played Malvolia.
Yeah, that's the only play. Sorry, that's one of the only Shakespeare plays that I've seen only digitally, and it was fantastic.
I've also got. This is the great thing about having your this version here. This is the Globe version. I'll hold it up to the camera as well. There we go, and then to you. It was the 2012-13 season at the Globe under the direction of Tim Carroll, and this is where Mark Rylance played Olivia, and a certain Stephen Fry played Malvolio.
I swear that's Stephen Fry.
It is, yeah. He played Malvolio. There we are. It was a version that I first came across when I was at school doing my A-levels. Yeah, phenomenal production. There we are. Anyone that wants anything good to watch, that's a good piece of recorded theatre. Go and get the DVD.
There is proof that there are two in very recent history of 12th Night.
Exactly.
So you made a good choice for whatever you went to. So what, Luke, sir, can I say, what alternate classic did you decide needs a reinvention, and how would you reinvent it?
Well, I cheated.
Okay, well, that's a good start.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. Well, I kind of technically cheat. I don't know if cheat is the right word, but let me reveal my hand, and I'll let you decide whether I cheated or not.
Okay, get it up.
You ready? Pardon?
Yep. The play.
Are you ready for this, people? I'm going to reveal it to the camera first, and I'm going to gradually go at that, and you're going to try and...
I know what it is.
Do you know what it is?
Oh, for God's sake. You meant to choose a play that isn't done often.
But hear me out. Hear me out. Okay.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna let you talk for this one. Enjoy
Yeah,
it.
hear me out. Okay. So, first play ever written, The Seagull by Anton Chekhov, written in 1896 in rural Russia. It was a failure at first sight until it was redone in the Moscow Art Theatre in 1896 by Konstantin Stanislavski and was a glaring success, even though Chekhov himself hated the play. And that's the history lesson.
We're going full history lesson mode here, aren't we?
That's my history lesson over for today. Because if I go any further, you probably are bored at this point anyway, because I'm banging on about this again, but it really get boring. Anyway, The Seagull. The first of his proper works, although he did do a full length before that, but it's widely considered his first proper success out of his 4 plays. And the reason I say that it's kind of cheating but not is because I wouldn't do it with all the characters. And the reason I wouldn't do it with all the characters is because I want to very much extract a specific theme out of the play. And something that's great about the play is, although there isn't a protagonist, anyone that tries to argue, I'm sorry, you're wrong. There's not a protagonist in the play, but there are 4 major characters, and they're all defined by one major theme. And I think that theme of art and what it means to make art is very relevant in this current period. So I would very much do a specific piece, a bit like, we spoke about this a few weeks ago on the podcast, where I said that Three Sisters that I saw at the National at the start of the year was technically after Chekhov, right? So I would kind of do it in the way that I would try to find semi-verbatim characters or actors and actresses and writers that could take or inherit the roles of Konstantin, Nina, Arkadina and Trigorin, and I would put it right in now, and I would extract a look at how the pandemic has specifically affected the arts industry by looking specifically at those 4 characters and looking as to whether or not the more established characters of Trigorin and Arkadina are particularly over, are they finished, or and have Nina and Konstantin, is this their big break now because we're in for a new future, or are they back to the bottom of the barrel? And literally kind of, we've spoken about it a lot in terms of whether we think it will be old classics or new works, but really kind of getting to the heart of what it is, almost as a bit of an experiment of the theatre industry itself, by taking a classic, but ultimately examining the theatre industry by using that classic basis to create a play with only 4 characters in that's very well known.
Okay, no, I see where you're going with that. I can almost get behind it fully, but it is The Seagull, so I'm going to have to be a little bit tempted.
I'm not saying that it will even be called The Seagull, I'm just saying that it'll be very much based off this text, but it would very much be set in this situation now, very much now, probably in this country as well, actually. So that would probably mean that you have to change the names anyway, because there's not many...
Yeah, not common names.
No.
So you're looking at this from a very directorial standpoint, because you're looking for the thematics and characters and so on and so forth. So would you get, like you were saying, get people in to sort of embody these characters? Would all 4 of them, you say, be actors? Or would they just be varieties of artists?
I think they're probably a variety of artists. And because I think that different art forms have been affected differently, but fairly similarly. But I would be interested in the age difference and the gender difference very specifically as to how that kind of works. because I think that could highlight a range of different things as to where we are in the industry right now. So although I think primarily, let's take Constantine as the example, I'd predominantly look for a young writer specifically, thinking about how that might have affected them. I mean, the thing about Constantine is he's not necessarily not known at the start of the play. He's not huge. We don't necessarily know about how successful the works he's done before the stage of his play is. So I don't really envisage him as being a completely, this is the first play that he's ever written, and when you see the play within a play, that's the first kind of thing that he's done. But I do think it would be very interesting to have chats with artists and very much try and integrate their dialogue into the world of this play after a play that was 120 years old.
Okay, no, you know what? I'm going to kick myself saying this. I buy it. I think if you reinvent it in such a way, I think that could be really interesting. I think in terms of taking 4 characters and sort of doing more of a character study, I think that could be really interesting. I think no, fair enough. I think that's a really interesting way to address sort of contemporary stuff that's happening now. I think that's the only way to describe it. I think you've got a good idea there, mate. As much as the Seagull gets done a lot, if you change it enough so it's not the Seagull, but like taking almost like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and there's sort of thing, we take characters from other plays and put them elsewhere. I can support that as a cheat. I can support that. I think I'll let you off for that one.
Because it's kind of a cheat, but it's kind of, the way I'm envisaging it is it's a completely new play, because although there are elements and themes and basis of characters that can be seen within this reimagining or restaging of a classic, it's very much focused on the contemporary and almost a response to the current climate. I get you now, man. When you first brought out Seagull, I knew you were going to. I sensed it. As soon as you said you were cheating, I was like, he's brought the Seagull out, isn't he? Bastard. But no, I get it. But let me ask you this. If you had to take a text and not do that, so without cheating, what text would you choose to redo? In terms of your perspective as a director who takes texts and puts them into performance, what would you do? What's the first play that comes to your head saying, that hasn't been done in a long time, that needs to be done? Probably something by Oscar Wilde, maybe. But I wouldn't necessarily know where specifically I'd put my money in terms of what I would specifically think of, but I can't necessarily remember Oscar Wilde being done very recently.
I think it's done a lot by Amdram and sort of low company. I can't remember. Well, we're probably going to get called up on this, but I can't remember any big theatres doing Oscar Wilde for at least a couple of years, or if not more.
Because I know that some of it is very stuffy 19th century, but I think that there's a lot of themes and characters that are still relevant to today, and I think that's why these plays live on. I mean, this is the perfect example of exactly what I just said. I mean, they're all stuffy, middle class, nothing to do, estate living toffs that are moaning about how terrible their lives are as they sit there with however many horses they've got and the rest of it, and they're, I can't act for a little bit. I mean, it's very relevant to today, obviously, because that's exactly what the world we find ourselves in, but I still think there are very relevant things in those kind of, that era of text, before going a little bit further afield back to Shakespearean times. But, I've got a question for the audience, is there anything kind of between that kind of late 15th, early 16th century to not middle of the 19th century that anyone can kind of think of that isn't necessarily done? Because I think, that's not really a period of theatre history that I'm very familiar with. It kind of goes, in the way I've been taught, you either do Shakespearean or Jacobean or Elizabethan, and then it's 19th century realism / naturalism, depending on what your definitions are, and then you go into the more contemporary stuff from 1950s, British theatre and the more avant-garde, and then up until the ultimate the very contemporary of today. There seems to be a big...
It does seem a bit like a dead zone. Actually, come think of it. When you think about it, I can't really... Again, probably going to get called up and told we're idiots, but I can't really... There's probably a few that
The only thing I can think of is it wasn't technically a play, but I did Helen Edmondson's adaptation of Coram Boy, which is set, I think, in the 17th century. The National did it, I can't remember when, but it was quite a big production, and very much like Small Island, lots of scenes, lots of different characters and whatever. But that obviously wasn't written in that period. I mean, that
weird period of history.
That would have been the Georgian period and the Stuart period, I think.
My history is awful.
If there's any theatre historians out there that haven't listened to this podcast, please get in touch, because I cannot think of anything between pretty much your play and mine, to be honest.
No. I mean, I couldn't tell you what year that was written, to be fair. It's really bad. I think it's in the 15s, but I'm not sure.
Mm.
But hey, I mean, we've now come to an agreement that your cheat is fair enough.
Mm.
If I had to choose between the two of them, obviously I'd choose my own.
And, well, if there's any theatres out there that are struggling for ideas, then drop us an email. All the links are in the description down below. If you want to play, then yeah, we're free. We're hireable.
We're very, very employable.
Very, very employable. Very, very
We've
employable.
got degrees now, so we're very employable.
We've got first-class degrees as well now, Tom, so...
That's what they're saying, right? We've got a degree, now we must get a job. We can promise them.
So if there's anyone out there that loves either idea, then please get in contact. Or if anyone's interested in writing this for me, then please get in contact. Or if anyone wants to direct Tom's version of Love's Labour's Lost, then get in contact.
Yeah. Well, Luke, I think that's been a wonderfully informative podcast.
I think it's been very informative.
Explored some fantasies of our own.
Mm.
You know what? I think we could do this format again. I think I like this. I think we could have a little natter about plays in another way. We'll have a little think about what we can do.
Yeah, and also have I'm going to do some research, I think, for next week.
I might have a little bit of a peek as well.
To whether or not there is kind of anything like glaringly obvious between that period that we didn't necessarily know anything about. Whether it's more English, I don't know, but who knows? Who knows? So I feel like that's kind of a good place to round things off again this week. So we'll be back next week with another episode, and I've already got quite a good thought as to what I think next week's could be about.
Exciting.
Off the back of some things that we've kind of briefly touched on today, and something that I know we've had a conversation about before way back when. So stick around, hopefully this time next week, for what could potentially be that episode. And I think that's been a good, informative episode. And as we say, you are free to hire us. Links are all in the description of how to contact us. And while you're there, smash that subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, then give it a like and all that. We keep forgetting to do that. It's bad practice. So we've covered it in this week's episode. Subscribe and do all that, because it helps.
For that you should.
Yeah, exactly. It helps with the old algorithms that are the YouTube world that no one really can understand. And, well, unless you're probably KSI or whatever, or you've got 15, 16 million subscribers. But there we go. We haven't. So, as we say, we've probably drawn that ending out somewhat today, but I've enjoyed this week's podcast, and
I've had a good time.
Good. So we'll see you next week. So it's goodbye from me.
Adios from me.
Adios. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.